What up, what up, what up? It's been a minute since I posted on this channel, but I want to start putting more effort into it. I've been focusing most of my efforts on the main channel, but now I've kind of built that up. Just about to hit 2,000 subscribers over there. If you want to help me hit it, you can subscribe, BD1 and only. I'll put it right here. But anyway, I came across this awesome video from this dude who calls himself a science teacher. Science teacher. Those air quotes, that's what I was doing. And this dude's awesome. I left a comment on his video and I did not expect him to reply because, number one, the video is like 3 years old, 4 years old, something like that. But number two, he has a lot of subscribers and a lot of comments. But he replied, and the reply was awesome. So the video in question is titled, "What is a woman is a silly question." And I love how these people have like given up answering what is a woman. They can't do it. And so now they're just dismissing it altogether. They're just like, hey, it's a silly question. What is a woman? You want a definition, you silly goose? No, that's a silly question. And Forrest, I'm talking directly to you now. Forrest Valkai, is that your name? Is that how you say it? Forrest Valkai? Everybody else, tune this out. I'm talking directly to you, Forrest. I can help you with your thumbnail design, bro. I can help you. What's all this black space on the sides? That doesn't look very visually appealing. Look, I can help you out. I know I only have 36 subscribers. On my other channel, I have almost 2,000. I'm nowhere near as famous as you, bro. But you can hire me to help you with your thumbnails. I can do it. Let's not waste any more time though. Let's just jump straight into the video because this video was it was something else.
Is a woman.
Why do you ask the question?
I'm asking. That's why I came to a college professor.
I am sorry to pause so early on in the video. This will be quick. But dude, Forrest, you gotta learn how to crop a video. What is this? What's all this black space all around? Dude, do I need binoculars just to be able to see your video? Come on, bro.
For some reason, this video came up on my For You page, and while I really don't like giving people like this attention, there is one thing about all videos like this that I think is kind of funny.
Dog, turn your shit in portrait mode. Turn your shit in portrait mode, come on. What is this black space on the side? I know I keep harping on this, but come on, bro.
You see, these videos are all exactly the same. It's a super awkward interview where somebody asks what a woman is, and then records the discomfort or hesitation that somebody shows in providing a simple, clear-cut answer to that question. And the end conclusion of all of these videos is, look how funny it is that this doctor, this scientist, this college professor, this lawmaker, this activist, this woke liberal whatever can't even tell me what a woman is. Aren't they all so silly?
I mean, silly probably isn't the adjective I would use, but yeah, experts should be able to define things. It's not an unrealistic expectation. It's not unreasonable, Forrest. It's not.
And of course, these videos are all edited in that super dishonest Ray Comfort style where it makes it look like the interviewer is the only sane person in the room.
I genuinely have no clue what he means by edited in a dishonest way. He just assumes we all know what he means and refuses to elaborate further. And I also have no clue who Jay Comfort is or Ray Comfort. He once again just assumes we all know who that is. But go on, King.
In fact, these videos are so much like Ray Comfort's videos that Ray Comfort and his team made one of them for themselves. But as odious and malignant as these videos are, what I find funny about them is the genuine and palpable disconnect between the person doing the interview and the person being interviewed. Because the person doing the interview thinks that they're asking some hard-hitting gotcha question that's going to expose the hypocrisy of the liberal left. But the person being interviewed, more often than not, is somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, they know what they're talking about so much that they can't answer a 4-word question. Dude, that's like taking your car to the mechanic and saying, this mechanic, he's the best in town. He knows everything there is to know about cars. And then you take it to the mechanic and the mechanic's like, you know what? I know so much about cars that I can't even explain to you what's wrong with your car. I mean, Forrest, it's not unreasonable or unrealistic to expect experts to be knowledgeable in their field of expertise.
They're an anthropologist or a gender studies researcher or a doctor, and their bemusement with this question is not because they don't know what to say, it's because they're just stunned that somebody would be this disingenuous and hung up on such a silly question.
I mean, it's not a silly question though. Words should have definitions, and this sort of rhetoric does have real-world consequences. If a woman goes into the doctor and has ovarian cancer, the doctor is going to need to know how to treat that based off of that woman's biology. And I'm not saying trans people don't exist. And I'm of the belief that you should try to treat others with kindness, respect, and empathy. That includes transgender people. I'll even use the preferred set of pronouns that a person wants me to use. I'll respect them if they show respect towards me. However, to deny reality is patently absurd. A transgender woman is a man. I will use she, her pronouns if that person prefers me to. A transgender man is a woman. I will use he, him pronouns if that person prefers me to. Asking for concrete definitions is not silly, Forrest. It is how we outline terms.
And if it wasn't for the sad fact that way too many people take these videos seriously, they would be the most perfect cringe comedy videos on the entire internet. Because what you inevitably end up with is a situation where one person is sitting there super smug because they just vehemently denied that nuance exists, and the other person just not knowing where to go from here.
Asking a person to define a term they are using is not denying nuance, Forrest. It is how we outline terms so that we can better communicate with one another.
But in the interest of education, let's dive down the rabbit hole and answer this question together, shall we? We'll start with the dictionary definition of what a woman is. I've got Merriam-Webster pulled up here, and it says that a woman is an adult female person. And while that may sound like the super clean-cut answer that these interviews are looking for, it's kind of problematic, isn't it?
It's problematic. Why? Because it doesn't affirm your worldview, Forrest. Once again, just because something is defined in a way that you do not like does not mean that definition is incorrect.
Because woman and female are often used synonymously in our culture, so maybe we should look up the definition of female just to be safe. Of, relating to, or being the sex that typically has the capacity to bear young or produce eggs. Of, relating to, or being typically. It's almost like there's nuance here.
No one is saying there's not nuance. There's going to be variations of the female sex, of course. There's going to be blondes, brunettes. They all fall under the same category. Just because there's nuance does not mean the definition is wrong.
But you should also notice that that's only definition 1A. Let's take a look at definition 1B and see what that says. Having a gender identity that is the opposite of male.
That literally tells us nothing. That's why there's 6 definitions, sorry. Having a gender identity that is the opposite of male. Well, you would have to define male, and I bet if you look that up, it'll say the opposite of female. This is what's called a circular fallacy. And that is why the manufacturers of this dictionary added more definitions to further clarify. This isn't the got you think it is.
Uh-oh, there's that word identity. I know that these interviewers really don't like that word, but just for funsies, let's look up the definition of gender identity and see what that says. A person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male nor female.
Once again, not the got you think it is. This is simply defining the term gender identity. It's not saying that it's correct. Webster's also defines schizophrenia, but it doesn't say that a person's delusions are correct. The person who popularized the term gender identity was a person named John Money, who was a PDF file who forced twin boys to have sex with each other. If that is the founder of your ideology, not a good look, Forrest.
So in summary, when we take into account the fact that whether or not you can have children doesn't actually define who you are as a person, it seems that the dictionary definition of a woman is an adult human with an internal sense of being female.
No, that's not what the dictionary definition says, and you cannot have an internal sense of being female, because female is a biological term. I can't have an internal sense of being female any more than I, as a man, can have an internal sense of having a uterus. That does not make sense, Forrest. You, as a science teacher, should know that the term female is used exclusively to refer to biology, not identity.
A person who identifies as a woman is a woman.
No, you cannot define something by using that same word. That does not explain what that thing is. For instance, I can't say a guitar is whatever I point to and say it is a guitar. I have to explain it. Definitions are important. Don't act like they're not. They have practical use when it comes to medical treatments, when it comes to psychological treatments. Definitions are important.
And I would agree with that definition, because remember, scientifically speaking, sex and gender are completely different things. Neither one is binary, and gender specifically is a social construct.
No. Gender is not a social construct. Gender expression is a social construct. For instance, you can be a biological male who is into more stereotypically feminine things. Once again, gender identity was popularized by a PDF file. Gender expression is how you express your biological gender. Gender is intrinsically tied to your biological sex. Once again, I will use whatever pronouns a person prefers me to. There was a gay guy that I knew in rehab that was gay, and he identified as a man, but he wanted me to use she, her pronouns. That's fine. I don't care. But you cannot deny biological reality. And if you think I'm being stubborn and pedantic, these have practical applications beyond just a silly culture war. For instance, to treat ovarian cancer, a doctor is going to need to know your biology, not how you feel in your head.
But unfortunately, the people who make these videos like to pretend that that's a controversial statement as well, so let's fact check that definition too. This is a college-level anthropology textbook printed by Oxford University Press in 2021.
Bro, you are making this way too complicated. It's a 4-word question. You shouldn't have to crack open a textbook and figure out the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what a woman is. Dog.
And if we flip to the glossary and look up gender, we find the following definition: the cultural construction of beliefs and behaviors considered appropriate for each sex. And note the wording there. Each sex, not both sexes, because if we actually open the text and find where they talk about gender, we get this paragraph. Many anthropologists did significant research throughout the 20th century that demonstrated why human cultural practices could not be reduced to racial differences. This is of course talking about the fact that race is also a social construct, but that's not the point of this video.
What? I'm getting trolled. There's no way. He said race is a social construct. Dude, so I can just identify as black? Bro, no way you said that. No way.
They also argued that culturally shaped gender roles considered appropriate for males or females in a given society could not be reduced to or predicted by the biological sex of an individual.
Once again, what you're referring to is gender expression, how you express your biological gender. And yes, gender is biological. Gender expression is a social construct. How do you not understand this? You're a science guy, right?
Whether determined by anatomy, physiology, or chromosomes. Today, anthropologists, along with others, call into question the assumption that human beings come in two and only two biological sexes, and that gender roles are built on those two sexes.
So now you're saying that there are more than two biological sexes? I thought the whole thing is that you guys were trying to say that sex and gender were different, and that sex was either male or female and gender was infinite possibilities. But now you're just straight up agreeing that sex and gender are the same thing. Wow, nice to know. And also notice the wording there. It says, today, anthropologists, along with others, call into question the assumption that human beings come in two and only two biological sexes, and that gender roles are based off of those two sexes. See, it's a very dishonest thing he does here, because he just reads from the textbook but doesn't show what the sources are for that textbook, what the studies were, and who the anthropologists in particular were that think that this is a thing. So I could just say there are people who think that the earth is flat, very prominent experts. What I define as an expert might not be an expert, but I could say that and it could be technically accurate, but that doesn't really mean that the earth is flat, does it? Without having the exact copy of that textbook in front of you, you are forced to just take whatever he says at face value. There's an old saying that says, when you own the information, you can bend it any way you want. And that's exactly what's happening here.
So yes, humans are sexually dimorphic, and there are biological differences between the sexes. Nobody's saying that isn't true. All we're saying is that those differences don't always fall into two mutually exclusive categories, and they are not necessarily determinate of gender.
Yes, they do, and there's actually 3 categories: male, female, and intersex. Those are the three categories. There's nothing else.
So it looks like the reason why the people in these interviews aren't answering the question, what is a woman, in the super reductionist, oversimplified way that the interviewer wants them to, is because women are far more complex and diverse and interesting than the interviewer thinks they are.
Not if you're talking about biology. If you're talking about biology, it's very simple to answer: XX chromosomes. Now, obviously, it's more diverse when you're talking about personality, when you're talking about psychology, when you're talking about gender expression. Obviously, it's more diverse when it comes to that, but that's not what the question was. You're purposely misunderstanding the question, and then after purposely misunderstanding the question, trying to make it seem like the person asking the question is dumb. That's a super dishonest way to go about political discourse.
Also, does anybody else notice how these interviews are always only asking about women? Nobody ever asks, what is a man? Nobody ever asks about trans people in men's sports.
The reason nobody cares about trans men competing with biological men is because trans men are women, and women, on average, are smaller and weaker physically than the average man is. You literally just owned yourself. I've got to ask you, Forrest, do you script your videos? Because this is a major oversight. You literally just owned yourself.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
It's always only women. Also, we never talk about intersex people. We never worry about indoctrinating people to be straight. There's never some big public outcry about straight cisgendered characters or straight cisgendered romances.
Bro, what? The LGBTQ QIA WXYZ crowd is always going on and on and on about how there's too much straight representation, there's too much cisgender representation. What are you talking about? They're always going on and on and on about that.
Or straight cisgendered representation in the media. No one's ever talking about sexualizing children when they have a straight cisgendered teacher.
Yeah, because straight people aren't the ones putting on drag shows for children or putting nasty, gross books in children's libraries. Straight people aren't doing that. We have to address the group that is doing that. And guess what? It's the LGBTQ folks. Sorry, but it is. And also, as for the teachers thing, there are cisgender women, straight women who molest their students all the time, and people are outraged about that. So I don't even know what you're talking about here.
Or see a straight cisgendered person on TV. Instead, it's only when these people have the opportunity to blend sexism and homophobia that we're all of a sudden very concerned about the fabric of society, and the only way to have a conversation about that is by bashing trans women.
Sexism and homophobia, huh? Well, guess what? Using buzzwords doesn't automatically win arguments anymore. This isn't 2020 anymore, Forrest. You're gonna have to have some substance behind your argument.
And then, of course, these videos usually wrap up with the obligatory assertion that there have always only been exactly two genders, and this whole trans thing is just a modern trend, and we need to do some critical thinking and get back to common sense. All while ignoring the fact that the interviewer clearly has no idea that there have been countless cultures around the world and throughout history that have had more than two genders.
I cannot believe they're still using this argument. Just because other cultures believe it doesn't make it automatically true. And there's other cultures that have conflicting beliefs with one another. So if you're using that argument, who is right and who is wrong? Other cultures in the past believed that if you prayed to the god of rain, it would rain and make your crops grow. That's what they thought. What is this weird argument that they keep bringing up? Well, other cultures said it, so it's right. No, that's not how that works.
And that their own inability to escape the heuristics of their cultural upbringing does not count as critical thinking and does not change reality.
I love how he just dissed our culture. Yeah, our culture's wrong. Today, with modern technology and all the modern conveniences and all the advancements in science, we're wrong. We're wrong today. But those hut dwellers 10,000 years ago that believed in 8 genders, they were the ones that were right. What is this, bro? You can't say that culture is right and then in the next breath diss our culture and say that it's wrong. What is this? Bro, you need to pick a lane. You can't just make a fallacious appeal to culture and then in the next breath say that culture is wrong and that's why we're all confused. Pick a lane, bro.
And sometimes the person doing the interview takes a big bite of the crazy muffin and points out that race is a social construct and there isn't a clear definition of species, so why can't they identify as black or a cat?
You are the one taking a big bite of the crazy muffin. Race is most definitely not a social construct. Race is tied to ethnicity. That's how it works. For instance, a black person can have heritage that it comes from Africa, or they can have heritage that comes from Jamaica, the Caribbean. They're both black. They're both racially black, but their ethnicity is different, and yet their race is tied to their ethnicity. Race is shared physical characteristics, and ethnicity is heritage. Nationality is the country in which you were born. This shouldn't have to be explained to someone who calls themselves a science teacher. If you say race is a social construct, then you also have to say ethnicity is, because they are intrinsically tied to one another. And if you say ethnicity is, then you also have to say culture is, which defeats your previous argument that other cultures believed in more than one gender. Once again, you played yourself.
You played yourself.
They want so badly for you to believe that this is difficult, and it really is not.
We're the ones that want it to be difficult? Dude, you just made a 12-minute video to answer a 4-word question. You cracked open a textbook. We're the ones that want it to be difficult?
There's almost nothing in the universe that can be adequately described in 1 or 2 concrete sentences. I'll give you an example. What is a table?
A piece of furniture with 1 or more legs and a flat surface.
Well, a table, that's really simple. It's a plank of wood with 4 legs that you put things on. Okay, what if it has 6 legs?
My definition still holds up. A piece of furniture with 1 or more legs and a flat surface.
Is it still a table? Yeah, sure. Are there any amount of legs that it could have where it wouldn't be a table? No, but it has to be made out of wood? Not necessarily. So it could be plastic or glass or metal. Sure. All right. Well, I have a step stool that has 4 legs in my kitchen. Why is my table not a step stool?
I've used a step stool as a table before. Once again, I will repeat my definition. A piece of furniture with 1 or more legs and a flat surface. And I've used a table as a step stool before to reach something that's really high. This isn't the got you think it is.
Well, okay, I guess a table becomes a table when it fulfills the function of being what a table needs to be in my room. And a step stool is a step stool because it fulfills the function of being a step stool.
No, a table is a piece of furniture with 1 or more legs and a flat surface. Just because you step on it does not make it not a table anymore. You can use it as a step stool.
This is very similar to what womanhood is and how womanhood works and how it functions and how gender works in society. We think of it as a very simple, binary, concrete thing, when in reality, like all things, it's actually spectral and complex.
No, gender expression is a spectrum. Just like using a table is a spectrum. You can use it for a variety of things. You can use a table to eat dinner. You can use a table to play cards. You can use a table to step on to reach something in a high place. Gender expression is a spectrum. That's like saying a table can now become a gorilla. That doesn't make sense. Gender expression is a spectrum. Gender is not, and gender is synonymous with sex.
In conclusion, just because the answer to a question is complicated or nuanced or unexpected, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Biology isn't simple. Gender isn't simple. Women aren't simple.
Whoa. Hold up. 2 minutes ago, you said we're the ones making it complicated. The people asking the question is making it complicated, which would imply that it's a simple concept. Because why would you, Forrest, accuse someone of making something complicated if you didn't believe it was a simple concept? I don't accuse Neil deGrasse Tyson of making string theory complicated because I understand intrinsically that it already is complicated. So which one is it, Forrest? Is it a simple concept or not simple concept? You gotta pick one, man.
Boiling women down to something like their organs or their chromosomes or their ability to give birth is absurdly reductive and astoundingly anti-feminist.
Good, you should want to be anti-feminist because feminism is a Marxist, fascist concept, but that's a different topic for a different day, I suppose. No one's trying to boil women down to that. We are defining what their biology is. And that is for the purpose of scientific categorization. That is all. We understand that psychology exists, gender expression exists, personality exists, but that goes into different territory. You are making it seem as if trying to define terms is boiling women down. You are the one who is trying to twist it and make it seem that way. It is simply for scientific categorization and for medical categorization. Obviously, women are complicated, men are complicated, people are complicated. All that is going on here is trying to categorize things for scientific purposes. Obviously, we understand that women are complex. No one is boiling them down to anything. Women have a complex set of needs, a complex set of fears, a complex set of emotions, a complex set of desires. They are human beings after all. The categorization exists solely for the practical use of medical and scientific purposes. No one is trying to boil women down to their biology, Forrest. It seems like there might be a little bit of projection going on. Just because you see women as one-dimensional doesn't mean that everybody else does.
And as I said in the beginning, if it weren't for the sad fact that way too many people take these interviewers seriously, it would be hysterical how much they don't get that. It's like the pseudo-intellectual version of that classic macho man trope of me big strong man because me go hunting and fishing, you woman because you have baby.
Talking in a caveman voice doesn't prove your point. You have to come up with actual logical reasons that aren't based on fallacies, Forrest.
As for these videos and the people in them, they already get way more attention than they deserve by pretending that they're anything more than fringe hate groups trying desperately to stay relevant in a rapidly changing world.
Hateful for what? Trying to open up a dialogue? Because they're not marching in the streets asking for trans people to be put to death. They're not advocating for trans people to all be rounded up and put in camps. That's not what's going on. They're trying to open up a dialogue is all that's happening. Yeah, maybe some of them are disingenuous or some of them are not willing to listen. But attempting to engage in healthy political discourse by asking questions and asking to define terms does not make them a hate group. Just because they don't agree with everything that you agree with does not make them a hate group, Forrest.
I genuinely envy everyone who has never seen one of these videos, so this will likely be my only time responding to them. I'm Forrest Valkai, thank you so much for watching, have an awesome rest of your day, and never stop learning.
Trans rights are human rights. Okay, I can get on board with that. At least we ended the video on something we can agree on. Trans rights are human rights. I believe that even though trans people are mentally ill and misguided, they do deserve to be treated with respect, empathy, and kindness. And I strive to do that. I have people that I know in my life that are trans, and I treat them with respect and empathy and kindness. Now, this Forrest guy, he invited me to call in to his live show to debate him, and he was actually pretty nice to me. So that's why I didn't go like super hard in the paint on him. I tried to keep it nice and respectful, but he wants me to call into his live show, so I'm probably going to do that and record it and then upload that shit to this channel. But yeah, big things coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned. And with that being said, go subscribe to my main channel. Peace out.
Never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right.